Hello everybody and welcome to another Top 5 board gaming video. Today's topic is all about lore-heavy board games. This is an interesting one for me because I am a sucker for a really good story, and so many board games really take a very light edge to this, where the idea is more of you have a generalized setting and you're doing something within that setting. Today I'm going to be talking about games that have a lot of background information, a lot of interesting aspects to the characters, all of that sort of thing. It's something that we see a lot in video games, but not so much in board games. On that note, one thing that I am avoiding is anything that has an existing IP. So of course, anything related to things like Marvel or Game of Thrones or The Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, all of that kind of stuff already has established lore outside of the board gaming world. And so I wanted to concentrate on board games that were designed and made with a lot of lore in mind. But that said, as always, you guys know I love to hear from you. So let me know what you think in the comments below. What are your favorite games that have a lot of lore? Do you enjoy having a lot of lore and backstory in a particular game? Why or why not? Whatever it is, let me know. But with that, we're going to get started with my number 5. At number 5, I've got Oath, Chronicles of Empire and Exile. This is a sort of legacy game where the idea is that you can play it as many times as you want, and then you can add and drop people as much as you want, and it makes no difference whatsoever in the game. The thing that's cool about this when it comes to lore is you're actually establishing the lore of the world. And that's also why it's lower on the list, because it doesn't have anything very specific at the beginning, but the idea is that as you play more and more and more, then you establish the different treaties and you establish the boundaries of the different countries and all of that sort of thing. It's a very cool concept, but it doesn't necessarily have a lot of it baked into it. You have to build it out, and for some people that is arguably more fun, but for the purposes of this list, it's a little bit lower because I want to see some established stuff. Regardless, Oath, Chronicles of Empire and Exile, my number 5. At number 4, I've got Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon. There is a sequel that recently went onto Kickstarter and is going to be coming out soon, but the fact is that this has literally piles and piles and piles of lore behind it. There is a lot going on with it. This is a cooperative campaign-based game that involves long-term consequences and all of that kind of stuff, which you absolutely love to see. The problem is that it has a lot of elements of Arthurian legends as well as Celtic mythology in it. So it does have some quote-unquote real-world stories to it, but they have been twisted enough so that I thought it would fit nicely on this list, at least for my purposes. I think it works well. I think it's a great game that has a wonderful story, and I absolutely adore playing it. Tainted Grail, Fall of Avalon, my number 4. At number 3, I've got Stuffed Fables. This may come as a little bit of a surprise, but it is a game I've talked about in this context before. In this particular game, you are playing as stuffed animals who are protecting your young girl from all of the nightmares that she's experiencing while she's sleeping. It's an absolutely incredibly unique idea and concept. There's also an expansion where you get to help out her brother who has inherited the stuffed animals and also has some of his own. And it's really interesting the way that you go about doing it, in that you have a storybook that you're playing through, and depending on how well you do at each individual level will determine where you go and what you do. And of course there is the so-called big bad evil guy at the very end that you are trying to defeat. There is an overarching goal and an overarching concept and idea that goes throughout the game. It's really fun. It's great for families, which is nice, but it's also middle of the road because it doesn't have that super heavy lore to it. So Stuffed Fables is my number 3. At number 2, we've got Frosthaven / Gloomhaven. So these two games are actually set in the same epic fantasy world where we've got well fleshed out NPCs, cities, all of that kind of stuff that you're going out and exploring. And in addition, all of the different items that you get can be transferred in between the two games. That said, the thing is that this is a legacy game, or these are legacy games, so they're campaign-based. they've got so much story to them that it's almost overwhelming in that sense, but it is really cool to see. It is really cool to read all of the little intrigues and stuff that they've got about it, but most of the lore that's involved with this is strictly involved with how you progress in the campaign and not a huge amount of background information, which is why collectively Frosthaven and Gloomhaven only make it to number 2. At number 1, I've got Time Stories. That's right, another legacy style play and burn game where in this particular case you start off with the core game and then you get expansions that allow you to go into different missions for this mysterious agency that you're working for. This is definitely a game that is very difficult to play multiple times, but the fact is the overarching story and each individual stories are incredible. I absolutely love them. I love the way that they're presented. And on top of that, each individual one has a unique mechanic or several unique mechanics that makes the gameplay different, while at the same time you can see progression of an individual story as well as the overarching what is going on here type of idea in the whole thing. I absolutely love it. I think it's a wonderful idea for a game series, and in addition, they've come out with a kind of spin-off. It's Time Stories Revelations or something along those lines that you can play in any order, but are still set in the Time Stories universe. Great game, lots of fun. Time Stories, my number 1. Well, everybody, that's going to be it for me. I hope that you enjoyed this video on my top 5 favorite lore-heavy board games. As I mentioned, I wanted to avoid existing IPs, like for example, Descent is based in the RuneScape world, and of course we have Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and all of that kind of stuff, which is very well established and has a ton of background information already baked in. But these board games, in my opinion, have some of the best works of background and just cool things that you can do within the world to change it and make your own background and do all of that kind of thing. But as I mentioned in the beginning, I want to hear what you all have to say. What are your thoughts on lore in board games? Do you find it to be something you care about? Do you not really care about it? Do you prefer playing games that are specific IPs? Let me know anything and everything in the comments, because I love to hear it all. And of course, if you haven't done so already, please take a look at my social media pages where you can interact with myself and my channel in a bunch of really fun ways. But with that, thank you once again for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.